Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we love talking about nonprofits, how they lift our communities, and how we can help them become even stronger. That's why we're honored to have with us Dr. Kevin Dean, our good friend. He's the president and CEO of the Tennessee Nonprofit Network. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We've known you and worked with you and your organization for a long time, but recently unveiled a new name, a statewide effort. So there's a lot of growth and expansion. But let's start with a little bit of the backstory kind of leading into the Tennessee Nonprofit Network. Give us some of that history.
Yeah. So we're only a few weeks old as Tennessee Nonprofit Network, but the organization has been around since 1992. It started as the Grant Information Resource Center in Memphis, and really expanded its services to go beyond grant writing to do capacity building for nonprofits in the Memphis area. And so, so I came on about 7 years ago. We rebranded to Momentum Nonprofit Partners. We've been serving as the regional nonprofit association for Memphis area nonprofits since 2017. And so during COVID kind of changed the landscape for us in a big way. We realized several things. One, Tennessee itself needs representation. We realized that we were one of the only states without a state nonprofit association representing all nonprofits. So we're one of the last big states in the country to have a state nonprofit association. We also realized that nonprofits need more participation in public policy and advocacy. And things showed up during COVID where we really wanted to make sure that nonprofits were represented and nonprofits had a seat at the table at the state level. So we sort of doubled down on providing the same services that we're providing to a lot of the same services that we're providing in Memphis to nonprofits across the state. We're going to remain the regional nonprofit association from the Memphis area, do a lot more of the on the ground training and technical assistance. But we're going to be providing a lot of public policy and advocacy support across the state, and do statewide research. A lot of the stuff that nonprofits have been begging for years. We're gonna start doing that for all 40,000 plus nonprofits in the state.
Well, and I think it makes sense. One, there's strength in numbers. And when you talk about getting a large, platform to speak from and to have influence, that makes a lot of sense, being able to galvanize all the nonprofits and put them in unison. So there's strength in numbers. Also, too, when you talk about benchmarking, best practices, resources, there's powerful efficiencies there. So operational efficiencies, resource efficiencies. So I think, all of this makes perfect sense in terms of being able to do what you do it well, but expand it out to increase the reach and the access. I also think, when you look at the power of what you're talking about, I think people don't realize how much the nonprofit sector plays a vital role in not only lifting, but also too providing jobs and opportunities and all of these from a pure economic workforce development piece. So talk about some of the stats, give us an idea of where we are when you talk about the nonprofit sector, especially across the state of Tennessee. Give us some of the stats and the numbers that really you want everyone to make sure they know.
Yeah. So nonprofits in Tennessee were the sixth largest industry in the state. And we so far have been the only ones without a fleet of lobbyists, at the state level. So we are an industry, and we drive $13.6 billion in wages for Tennessee residents as employees of these nonprofits. That's not a small number. We're also 10% of the state gross domestic product. So. Or gross product, I'm sorry. So that's 10% of the gross product. That's huge. So we've I didn't know those numbers until last year, because we just really didn't have much data on Tennessee nonprofits just across the board. So that gives us a lot of power in numbers, and when the COVID-19 Recovery Act was pushed through, we mobilized really for the first time across the state to make sure that nonprofits were included in that. And it was fantastic watching a legislator on the floor say, nonprofits, we hear you. we stop calling us, basically, because so many people had called. You will be included in this amendment. That was a very powerful moment for, I think, a lot of nonprofits going, hey, we just have to speak up, and we can really set ourselves as experts in the room for, and partner with legislators on issues that are affecting our communities.
Talk about how the setup is in terms of the kind of the membership piece of this, who you're servicing, how you're servicing. So go ahead and start laying the blueprint for the organization.
So the nonprofits, we have since 2017 been one of the only regional nonprofit associations in the country to offer free membership. We're going to extend that for at least 3 years to all nonprofits in Tennessee. We want as many people to join as possible, and we don't want to create any sort of barriers to access for our services. One of the other things, we provide a lot of free stuff to nonprofits. Not everything has a cost associated with it. There are some things that have costs, our events and trainings, but a lot of the resources we're just going to provide for free because it's the right thing to do. And we're going to rely very heavily on corporations and foundations to support that, so that we don't have to nickel and dime the nonprofits in Tennessee. So we'll be focusing on two different pieces of this: the sector building piece, which is the research. We'll be launching a nonprofit compensation survey for the entire state of Tennessee. We'll disaggregate by region. That'll come fall of 2024. We're hoping to partner with Sycamore Institute. They have a great reputation. We love them, and their research is fantastic. We're also going to be doing a lot of the public policy and advocacy support and education for nonprofits, while also building relationships with legislators on behalf of nonprofits to make sure that nonprofits' needs are included in legislative agendas, and that we can serve, be invited to the table to serve as experts in the room on issues that are affecting Tennesseans. We'll also be doing our Mid-South Nonprofit Conference that typically sells out a month in advance. We're gonna take that statewide. So we're gonna have a Tennessee State Nonprofit Conference, and we're gonna move it around every year to a different part of the state. So we're having it in Memphis again in 2024. So we'd already planned that, but 2025 we'll go to East Tennessee, and then 2026 I believe is going to be in Nashville. So we're also doing a day on the Hill for nonprofits every year. That was really successful this year. It was a lot of fun. We got one nonprofit got legislation passed. One nonprofit got to speak at the education subcommittee. We had a lot of really excited folks. It was like watching kids trick or treating, going door to door with their legislators. So we're going to do that as a statewide event. And then we're also going to be providing a lot of resources. We have templates and toolkits and resource packets for boards, for nonprofit leaders, that, if you need a succession plan, we have a template for that we can give you, so you don't have to, try to recreate the wheel. We also have a lot of online assessments and resources online that we will provide for free to nonprofits. And we'll also have some statewide trainings as well.
When you look at the kind of the themes that bubble up that are consistent working with nonprofits, and you mentioned boards, and I think working with boards, activating boards, getting the right diversity, with the board members, that's a major piece of this. When you look at constant challenges that nonprofits face, obviously raising awareness, fundraising, recruiting volunteers, what are some of the constant kind of the challenges that you all see and hear, and then obviously the resources and things that you want to kind of make sure that you're pushing out to help them overcome those challenges?
So board governance is, fundraising is number one. It's always going to be number one. There's never going to be enough money to fund all nonprofits, so that will always be a thing. Typically when people come to us and talk about fundraising, though, we ask additional questions, because a lot of times we find out they're not fundraising correctly because they they haven't built their capacity. So their board is not fundraising like they should. They don't have, their organizational chart doesn't work, so they don't have a fundraiser in place. Sometimes the CEOs or the executive directors don't know how to fundraise. So the fundraising is always going to be number one. It will continue to be number one. Board governance is always number two. Some people are always struggling with board governance, and really that can make or break you as a nonprofit leader. One thing that showed up in our recent nonprofit State of the Sector report is that 51% of nonprofit CEOs said that they plan on leaving their positions within the next 3 to 5 years. That's a lot. That's a huge leadership gap. So we have to address that. And I would assume that is the stats would be similar across the state of Tennessee, because they are similar across the United States based on looking at the succession trends. So succession planning is becoming and leadership development is a huge challenge that we're going to be facing over the next few years in nonprofits. And we have a lot of resources to help folks with that. We have online trainings. People can get their certification, all sorts of certifications through us with online training. We partner with the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance to do the CNP certification. There are so many different ways that nonprofit individuals can get additional resources and professional development, but also organizations can come and get resource packets, toolkits. They can do online assessments. We can provide them with all sorts of free tools that they can use to really assess and take action around challenges they're facing. And what's great is with 40,000 plus nonprofits, nobody's unique in the challenges they're facing. We're all facing the same stuff, so in knowing there's should be some comfort knowing that a lot of other nonprofits are facing the same thing, and we're building out resources to address all of those for nonprofits across the state.
And I think that is the cool piece of this, is that you do find that in many cases you're, myopically focused, you're in the weeds, and it's like you step back and you realize, oh wait, others are struggling with this too. And we're all going through this in unison, and I can share, and we can work together and collaborate, not only, among different nonprofits in your own region, but across the state. And I think that's even more comforting when you look at what, someone is going through in Chattanooga versus Memphis versus Nashville versus Jackson. And so you start realizing, okay, wait a second, this is a shared experience. We can all learn together and go through this together. At the same time, realizing these are the challenges, like, that percentage of institutional knowledge. I mean, that's a big, amount that could be leaving. You've got to be prepared to make sure that, you can perpetuate and sustain the nonprofit and the efforts. So carry that into, what's something that you've already learned, as you've launched and expanded this yourself, and looking at the different cities and the different, opportunities. What's something that you've learned that really puts a smile on your face in terms of how you can help create positive change?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things. One, we've been operating sort of as three different states because we're a long state. It takes 8.5 hours to get across, the state. So that's different from being in Maryland or Connecticut or, maybe even Mississippi. Like, we're just a really long state. And so there's cultural divides there that, like we tend to talk to West Tennessee folks. There's so much innovation happening across the state that I've learned about, that I can't wait to share with people, that I can't wait to convene people around. And, like there are things that are happening in Chattanooga that Memphis folks need to know about. There's things in Nashville that Knoxville people need to know about. There's things happening in rural Tennessee that big metro areas need to know about. So I'm really excited about being able to bring what's good, in Tennessee and lifting those up so that people can replicate it. I think the second thing, people have been historically scared of public policy, and we're in a really polarized world right now. And I understand that there's a lot of nervousness around that, but we have this great opportunity to set ourselves as experts, and representatives of our communities to legislators, and developing really positive relationships with those legislators is something that is doable, and it's happening across the country. In Tennessee, we might be a little bit behind in our nonprofit sector in our policy and advocacy, but people are thrilled, one, when they learn they can advocate for their organizations and fight bad legislation that hurts nonprofits and the communities they serve, and introduce legislation that helps nonprofits. They're thrilled to learn that they can do that. So we're really excited about educating folks on what they can and can't do legally. You have to be nonpartisan. We have to be nonpartisan as 501c3 organizations. But that doesn't mean you can't fight bad legislation or introduce good legislation or fight for good legislation, and so that's going to be really, hopefully, game changing in, potentially accessing more state government funding, accessing, more resources for nonprofits, and just gaining a seat at the table, which I think is urgently important right now.
It's separate, but it's related. When you look at the polarization in America across our nation, nonprofits play an integral role, because when you look at volunteerism, that's what brings our community together. When you serve together, you get to know each other, your heart, you see the good, you create good, you power the good. And I think the volunteerism, especially through nonprofits, plays a very important role in healing our community and bringing our communities together. And so I think that's a whole nother aspect that I think really is important around this, why the nonprofit work is so important, not just to obviously lift our communities for all the good they do directly with their services, but also directly healing through volunteerism, which I think is really a powerful piece of the equation. So let's go ahead and carry that conversation forward into where can we learn more? So website, social media, where would you direct everyone to learn more about the Tennessee Nonprofit Network?
Yeah, so it's tnnonprofits.org. We just changed our website over the other day when we made our big announcement. But you can find all the resources, all the information online. We are going to be opening applications for new members, nonprofit members, January 1st, 2024. But you can already start using the resources on our website. So we want people to take advantage of what we're offering. So we're on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn presence, and we're on X for now, and we're on Facebook for now. So LinkedIn is the place where most people get their information about us, though. So
well, Kevin, you've been a longtime advocate and supporter of the nonprofit community and doing tremendous good, you and your team. So thank you so much for all you and your amazing team do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.